Hey everyone, welcome to the Higher Alignment Podcast. I'm your host, Minh-Thu, and I'm an executive coach focused on helping people heal their burnout and reconnect to their purpose through self-mastery. I show executives and high performers how to identify their blind spots and use this to propel them on their journey to finding more fulfillment and freedom without burning out. If you've been feeling lost and disconnected in life, book a complimentary connection call to discuss how we can get you back on the path of self-mastery and living a life that feels successful on your terms. Go to higheralignmentconsulting.com/program to book your call, and we'll see you on the other side. Okay, so I want to talk about this concept of perfectionism today. And what inspired this particular episode was a client of mine. And last week she had said, "Do you think men experience perfectionism the same way women do?" And she said, because I was talking to my husband and he doesn't identify with perfectionism. Like he doesn't relate to that. She's like, however, when I see how he works and how he gets things done, like he very much so exemplifies the traits of someone who's a perfectionist. She's like, where I'm just so, I know I am one. And she's like, so do you think men and women experience it the same way? And I was like, this is fascinating. Like, I love this question. And this client, by the way, shout out to her. She knows who she is, asks the best questions. Like every session, she asks me some thought-provoking shit. And I love it because it's inspired a few of these episodes, but it's great because it shows me that she's really taking this journey seriously. So I said, oh, this is such a great question. And so I wanted to dive into this concept of, again, the different ways men or women may experience perfectionism. Now, obviously, I'm going to be a little bit more biased towards one because that's what I've lived and breathed. But I also have male clients. I used to work in a male-dominated industry. So I've had a pretty up close and personal experience with it being the risk, like witnessing it happen. But again, obviously I'm a woman, so I'm going to speak to a bit of a different tone that way. But let's first talk about what perfectionism actually is, right? So perfectionism is essentially this idea that you don't want to put work out or into the world or show up a certain way unless it's like quote unquote perfect, which we all know perfect doesn't exist, but perfect to your standards and your ability. So that means my hair's just got to be just right. The outfit's got to be a certain way. My makeup is fully done. My work, there's no spelling errors. There's no ums and ahs in my video. There's like the paper is perfectly pressed, like whatever. I know I'm using silly examples here, but like your work has to be of a certain echelon. Otherwise, it cannot go into the world. Okay. Now, obviously, there is something great about that in an aspect of you want to put out incredible work. Like you want to show up in your best attire. You want to put work out into the world that is great and that people go wow about, you know what I mean? Like there is obviously something, commendable about that and honorable about that. And actually this same question, the same client, she had asked me a few weeks earlier. She said, well, how do I know if I'm actually a perfectionist or if I just like have a high quality of work, right? Again, great question. She asked the best questions. And I said, well, here's the thing. Putting out a high quality of work is no issue. That again, very commendable, very honorable, very respectable. The issue is if you feel like the quality of your work dictates your worth. Okay. That's where it gets finicky. And so what that means is where perfectionism gets you in trouble is that it will either hold you back from doing something or not actually, and it requires way more energy out of you to get something done. So for instance, let's use, in my line of work, a big thing is obviously content creation, right? So I make videos for Instagram. I make content for LinkedIn. I do the podcast. And so where perfectionism used to really get me and still does to some aspect is I would have to make sure everything was right when I was putting up a video for Instagram. Okay. A little 1-minute video. If the lighting wasn't right, if my hair wasn't perfect, if my makeup wasn't perfect, if I screwed up one little word, if I said too many times, I'm like, oh my God, I have to redo everything over again, right? And so something that was a 1-minute video, I would shoot 15, 20 times easily, okay? And also my hiccup, this is again, perfectionist to me is I'm kind of a one take girly. So I don't like to chop up my speech. I don't like to read off a teleprompter. I like to know I like to have like I need to know kind of my own internal script. I don't read it, but I need to like kind of memorize that script and be able to shoot it off start to finish with no issues. It doesn't sound like a big deal in 1 minute, but again, like just like I said, I would end up shooting a 1 minute video 15 or 20 times. And so think about now how much energy I've wasted on that one simple project. I only technically needed 1 minute of energy to use on that project. And now I've X15, X20'd it, right? I'm using 15, 20 times the amount of energy to facilitate one task, right? And that's where it gets tricky. And that's what's one of the underlying causes of burnout. I always say all the time, like burnout isn't because you have the task of making the 1 minute video on your plate. The burnout comes from the fact that you're using 15, 20 times the amount of energy to execute one thing because you think it has to be perfect, right? And that's where perfectionism bites us in the ass, because while many of us look at perfectionism like an honorable thing, perfectionism really is just stem from the fact that we want to minimize our exposure to people seeing our flaws and our insecurities. It's a defense mechanism. We don't want to risk people seeing us as inadequate or unworthy or insecure or, again, just flawed. And so we do everything we can to try and prevent that from happening, right? We try and do everything perfect. And here's the trickery. Is we think we want to do it perfect for everybody else. I need to do this the best I possibly can for my boss because my boss is so great, and I want her to know that I'm showing up for her, and I got to show up for the team. Like that's usually where the mindset's coming from. I just need to do a great job for everybody else. But really, what your perfectionism is saying is I need to do a great job. I need to do a great job so that no one else can see me as inadequate. It's not actually about them and how they feel. It's about how you may or may not feel if they don't view your work as outstanding. Because if you show up as perfect and they view it that way, you don't risk the potential judgment, the potential shame, whatever you think, whatever story we all make up in our head about that. We think that, oh my God, they're going to see me in this perfect light, and therefore I won't have to deal with the fear of rejection or the vulnerability of not looking perfect or being exposed. That's really where perfectionism comes from. Okay. It all goes back to our self-worth. I deep down along the way as a child learned that the only way for me to feel valued, loved, connected, appreciated is if I show up as the perfect child. And so I will do whatever I can to make sure that I show up that way so that my caregiver, my parent loves me back and I know I'm being a good girl or a good boy. Right? That's really what perfectionism is about. It always comes back to our feelings of inadequacy. And so when she asked me about this difference between men and women, I was just honest and talking out loud with her about it. And I'm going to be the same with you guys right now. And I don't know if this is right. This is just my opinion and what I've witnessed. Um, I do firmly believe that men also have perfectionist tendencies. Again, especially the men who are going after greatness. You know what I mean? The men who don't want to settle for mediocrity, the men who want to step up, men or women. But the way I witness it in men is they have, I think men typically strive for perfection more in their work. And the reason I think that is because men have been valued for what they do for work. Like that's from a society conditioning standpoint, like the quote unquote value or worth of a man has always come down to how can he protect and provide. And so that's typically where you'll see, like, if a man loses his job, it can usually take a really hard hit on his sense of self-worth. Or, if he, it seems to affect them a lot more in that area, and understandably so. And so when I think we talk about perfectionist standards for men or tendencies, I think that's usually where it shows up. Now, I'm sure it can show up in relationships as well too, but I think that's just the main area it tends to show up. Now with women, All right, if you're a burnt out executive or high performer, chances are you're on a 3 to 4 month cycle of burnout, meaning the first few months you're high energy, productive, and making it happen. And then once that third or fourth month sets in, you're exhausted, irritable, snappy, and ready to give it all up. Now, there are two main reasons you get stuck in this cycle that no one talks about when it comes to stress management information out there. So I've put this together in a short video called The Real Reason You're Burnt Out. I put it in the show note links, so take the 12 minutes to watch this video and let this be the first step to you getting off this hamster wheel of burnout. All right, guys, back to the episode. This is where it gets tricky, okay? So I was talking with Laura Larios, which I've had her on the podcast before. If you guys haven't had a chance listen to our episodes, please do. She talks about the mother wound and the father wound. She's a nervous system expert. And we were talking about, on one of the episodes, the nervous system of the women and how our nervous system over the last 3 generations, including ours, has had to drastically evolve over the years. Meaning this, the nervous system of our grandmothers, pretty much all of them were stay-at-home moms. Right? So they stayed at home. They were the homemakers. They took care of the kids. They cooked, they cleaned. That was the majority of our grandmothers. I would say probably 90 some percent of them. That's what they did. So that's what their nervous systems were prepared to handle throughout the day. Then you move to our mother's generations, which I'm 36. My mom's in her 70s now. But our moms, most of them had a choice. Do you want to stay home with the kids or do you want to work? Right? Because now that generation of women was starting to do that a little bit more. And so once again, the nervous system had to adapt for now potentially being the sole homemaker and care provider, you know what I mean? Like for running the household, and then potentially also working or just going out into the workforce for the first time, which is a whole new adjustment because you have to remember that our nervous systems evolve from our ancestors, just like our DNA does. So my mother, when she was in her mom's womb, was absorbing the nervous system of her mother and how she processed stress and anxiety. And then when I was in my mom's belly, I was also absorbing the nervous system of my mom and how she handled stress, right? So it all gets carried down, okay? So then my mom worked and took care of the kids and had to do that dynamic of you know, I'm still the main care provider for the children. They come to me, but I'm also working a few days a week, or maybe I'm working full time, right? So then again, the nervous system has to adjust again. And now to our current generation, where it's pretty much expected that the women go work, and not only go work. Now there's also a standard of like, what is she going to do? Is she going to become a CEO? Is she going to become a VP? Is she going to run her own business? So now it's not even just like, oh, you're going to do a 9 to 5 or maybe wait some tables, which there's nothing wrong with that. But now there's also, not that you have to, whatever you do is up to you. But now there's this extra layer of like, not just like getting a job. It's like, what kind of job? What are you going to do out in the world and create? What are you going to make happen on top of having kids? And while yes, maybe you have some help, maybe you have some childcare, whatever the case is, the reality is the mother will always be the first primary caregiver. I don't care what you say, okay? And there's some incredible fathers out there. Kudos to you guys. But those little rugrats spent 9 months in her belly. So they're always going to run to mom first. And she's always going to be the one who knows what to do first when they're crying or when they need to be consoled. And dad's always going to be the first one they want to have fun and play with. Like, it's just, I know that's not every situation, but that's the majority of it. Okay. So when you think about women and how our nervous system has had to progress over these last 3 generations, it went from just being a stay-at-home mom to being a stay-at-home mom and maybe working a little bit to now being a career woman that has kids as well. Right? That's a big evolution in only 3 generations. And then for men, again, I'm not downplaying you guys. I know you're going through a lot too. I'm not to say that your experience isn't valid or real as well. But the main thing for men was then and still is to protect and to provide. They're still being measured on those same metrics, right? Like who are you showing up as in the world as a man to take care of, to protect, to create order. Like they're still being governed on those same metrics. And so when it goes back to the perfectionism aspect, I think men are still showing it in that same way. Like they're still showing up with the perfectionist tendencies in that area of their life. Whereas women, we are now exemplifying it on so many different levels, professionally, personally, and quite frankly, it's exhausting because the other side of that is now the feminine masculine dynamic, which every human being has both masculine and feminine energy within you. That's the way we were created on a spiritual level. Okay. So masculine energies are more outwardly. That is the doing, that is the making things happening, that is the hunting, that is the achieving, that is the masculine energy. The feminine energy is the receiving, the being, the flow, the nurturer. Okay. And so if you're a male and you're more masculine oriented, then you're going to have you're going to thrive more in your masculine energy, and you're going to have moments of embracing your feminine. You're going to have moments of being nurturing with your kids. You're going to have moments of just being and letting your wife like love you, or whatever the case is, whatever. You're going to have moments of allowing that, that more um being nurturing, softer side of you exists, but where you're really going to do the most of your thriving is in that masculine. Now, where that's gotten tricky for us as women is as we've progressed from being more in the feminine nurturer being role to masculine, feminine, to, let's be honest, these days, just a lot more masculine. That's also just throwing us off altogether if you're a feminine natured woman. And you guys have heard me talk about this so many times. I'm a firsthand culprit of that. Like, and I don't want to blame it all on society, but let's be honest, that's the programming of society right now. Right. And like, but it still was up to me to fix it. But I was so heavily in my masculine achieving. And I achieved a lot of stuff where that added to my burnout. Because again, if we're going back to my other example of like a 1 minute video, 1 minute of energy now took me 15, 20 times the amount of energy. Now thinking about doing that when you're like, that's like I'm writing with my left hand all day when I'm actually right-handed. Like it's the same thing with the masculine and feminine. My thriving, where I become the most alive, where my power lies, is actually in my feminine energy. But I was sitting in my masculine all day long. So then I needed to, because the business world does call that out of you. You got to make decisions. You have to make things happen. But what it was doing, the balance was not there. And not even the balance, the harmony was not there. Because I'm sitting here all day trying to write with my left hand when I'm actually right-handed. Right? So I was just doing things in a way that was unorthodox to my natural nature. And again, so then that now, instead of 20 times the amount of energy, I'm actually burning 50 times the amount of energy, because I'm going against the grain of how I've been ancestrally like guided to do things. Right. And so when we talk about this perfectionism aspect, again, going back to it, do I think it affects both men and women? Yes. But as I said before, as a woman who's experienced it, I think it just eats away at us way more. And then the other part of it too is like, let's just be honest, women have been valued more in society in the last how long for how we look. And how pretty we are, and how we can show up and these things. And so that there's another aspect of perfectionism with just how we look in the world, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole, and our body types and all these things, right? So I say that all to say that, do I think both parties experience it? Yes. Do I think it's different in how we experience it? Yes. And all that to say is we can probably just both offer a little bit more compassion to each other. Men, you're more than what you can do work wise. You're more than what you can do and how much money you make. And that's not to say, I'm going to be really real with my opinion. That's not to say that you shouldn't go out there and want to protect and provide. I think that's a very honorable thing for you to do as a man. And I commend it, respect it, value it. But you are more than that. You're still a human with a heartbeat who loves, and who is a brother, a father, a husband, a friend, whatever the case is. Like you're still way more than that. And as women, I know with me and my friends anyways, like, yeah, we want to know a guy that know a man is stable in what he can do, but we also want to know your mind, and we want to know your emotions, and we want to know your perspectives, and we want to let you know it's okay if you got to let us in and cry for a moment. And we want to let you know that like most women would rather hear what their man's going through than be completely left out of it. So this is just a reminder for you men that we value and hopefully we can support you in a way where you are more motivated to go out and make things happen and more motivated to be the protector and the provider. But that's not all of you. And we see you and we value you. And for women, you know, um, we don't have to feel like we have to be perfect all the time. And we don't have to feel like we have to sacrifice our needs for everybody else's and suppress our truth and suppress our feelings. And I think that, I've referenced this before in a podcast. I'm going to do it again right now. I was listening to the interview Gabor Mate did on the Mel Robbins podcast, and he was talking about autoimmune disease, which you guys would know that's essentially when the body starts attacking itself. That's essentially what autoimmune is. There's a few different variations of it. But they say the majority of people who have autoimmune disease are women. And he's like, and it's not because they're women, but it's because they have certain traits that are tied back to autoimmune disease. And those are traits like suppressing your truth, putting the needs of others before your own, identifying with the role of caregiver and nurturer before identifying with the role of just who you are as a person, not taking care of your needs, neglecting your needs, like those behavioral patterns are predominantly found in women, and that's what leads to the autoimmune disease. And so, ladies, it's not like, it doesn't even make sense that we think we need to show up perfect in the boardroom, perfect in the household, perfect as a mother. Like it's a lot. And that's not to say that you don't want to be the best version of yourself in all those situations, but this is where like doing the inner work and reprogramming your subconscious and all the things is so important. It's because the reason we feel that is because, again, at some point in childhood, we were taught that if we don't show up as perfect, we're not valuable, or we're not worthy, or we're not good enough. And so we hold ourselves to these expectations that just like don't even make sense. Right. And I bet you the people that are in your life that love you don't don't even put the same pressure on you that you're putting on yourself. You know what I mean? Like, ladies, I know, like, this is a silly example, but I was talking to my boyfriend about it the other day of just like eyelashes, okay? Like, I know they're kind of going out of style now, but like fake eyelashes, right? Or getting eyelash extensions. And like, actually, the guys that I used to work with used to say this to me all the time. And they were like, Minh-Thu, we give zero fucks how long your eyelashes are. Right. And they were being funny about it, but it was true. I was like, oh my God, you're right. And then so we're going to pay all this money to get our eyelashes done every 3 weeks or whatever the case is. And you guys don't even care. And like, nope. But to me, that's just, again, it's a silly but real example about how we put ourselves through so much stuff. Right. And I get it. The societal pressures, like, I get it. But it's really up to us, guys, or ladies. It's really up to us, ladies, like the level of pressure we put ourselves through. Like, you're just as worthy whether you have a full face of makeup or you don't. You're just as brilliant whether you're in a powerhouse suit or you're in your joggers. Like, you're just as powerful whether your email has a few spelling mistakes or it doesn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know these are trivial examples, but do you get what I'm saying? If you have those things within you, if you have a great heart, if you have the experience, if you know how to respond in these situations, like, we need the perfectionism is eating away at us. And it's a tab that's open in the background that is wasting so much energy. It's making you burnt out. It's making you irritable. It's making you resent relationships, situations, projects that you don't even realize you're starting to resent purely because of the standard and the way you think you have to show up. Now, what I will say is this is survival conditioning, okay? So it's not as simple as saying just like, oh, okay, well now that I know after everything Minh-Thu explained, like, okay, I won't put that pressure on myself anymore. Easy. No, it's not easy. It's not as simple as just saying, oh, I'm not going to care anymore. Or like, why am I letting, like, it's not that simple because it's ingrained in your nervous system. It's imprinted on your nervous system. So like, okay, if you can make it happen just off making that proclamation, then cool, good on you. I don't know many people who are strong enough to do that, because where the perfectionism comes in is in the subconscious. It's not in the conscious moments where you're fully present, like you are maybe with me right now, when you're fully aware of being like perfect doesn't exist. Your perfectionism and that behavioral survival strategy creeps in the thick of your day when you don't even realize it's there. And you're like, oh my God, I just wasted an extra 50 minutes doing something that only needed to take me 15 because of my perfectionism survival strategy. From the fact that I think if I don't put my best absolute foot forward, and if I don't double check this 20, 30 times, I risk the exposure of the fact that I'm not good enough. Right? So, how do we really heal perfectionism? Well, it starts with the nervous system. It starts with looking at where the conditioning comes from. And then we have to reprogram your subconscious around it. It's pretty much just a software upgrade, the easiest way to put it. And this is actually what I take my clients through in the higher alignment program. So, again, shameless plug. Um, but this is one of the main things that we address. And I promise you, addressing the perfectionism with my clients, their work continues to be equally as great, if not better. They become more productive, they become more creative, but most importantly, it doesn't eat away at them the way it once did. They don't have to over prepare, they don't have to overthink, they don't have to ruminate before they release something out into the world. They trust that their greatness is there. And they always say, like, I kind of just don't give a fuck anymore. And not in a way where it's like they're trying to like say that they don't care about the quality of their work, but I don't give a fuck in the sense that they're not going to let it eat them alive, and that they trust their resume, they trust the work they've done, they trust who they are, and know that, you know, that 10 minutes of preparation, it was all they needed, and it's still going to be great versus wasting another hour on it. And that's what's so freeing about it, is that one tab that used to be open all the time that was draining so much energy. Now they can close that tab so fast and they feel free. They regain time, they regain energy, they regain inner peace into their life. They're not so mentally constrained and frustrated. They're not so irritable. They're not so snappy and impatient, because they've regained that part of them that knows that no matter what happens, they're always worthy. So, I'm curious, guys, to hear your perspective on perfectionism, and I'd love to carry this conversation on more. So reach out to me on Instagram, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know what your journey with perfectionism has been. I'm fascinated by this. I welcome these conversations. And just know that, like, anyone can heal from it. It doesn't have to riddle you, it doesn't have to eat away at your energy and your psyche. But also, you can still put incredible, extraordinary work out into the world, and just feel more at peace and free with it. All right, guys, thanks for tuning into another episode of the Higher Alignment Podcast. If you got something out of this episode, I would ask that you please go subscribe and leave the podcast a 5-star review so that it can help find its way to other people who are having a hard time and need support. My mission in life is to help executives realize that you don't need to suffer in silence while still performing at a high level. I want to help free people of the heavy pressure they carry on a day-to-day basis, and having more people listen to this podcast will do just that. So wherever you listen to this, please go leave it a 5-star review, hit subscribe so you never miss another episode, and we'll see you in the next one.